So lately, I've been wondering if you're wondering something, which is at this time of year when you're maybe sad or a little bit unmotivated or you're not thinking clearly, are you burned out? Are you depressed? Or is it seasonal affective disorder? So let's get into it. I think we don't talk enough about seasonal affective disorder, and we've lately been talking a lot more about burnout. And both of those things can overlap with depression. So let's talk about that first. How do you identify what it is? And then what do you need to do about it? So we're going to talk about how to identify them, but then we're really going to focus on what to do if it's seasonal affective disorder. And can you have other things in between? So first, let's talk about symptoms. They're all generally similar. You can have emotional symptoms, physical symptoms, social and cognitive symptoms, things like hopelessness and self-doubt and not feeling good about things, even if they used to make you feel good. Feeling detached, not wanting to socialize, not wanting to connect with people. It can get as extreme if it's depression instead of just burnout. It can get as extreme as suicidal thoughts or ideations. Seasonal affective disorder. So the burnout symptoms of emotional distress and physical ailments like headaches and sometimes exhaustion, physical exhaustion, things like that. Cognitive brain fog, all of that. Social withdrawal and the hopelessness and the lack of self-confidence. Like you start to feel hopeless, not only about things, but about yourself as well. Those all fall into the burnout category, but they can also all fall into the depression category too. The only real difference between the two is burnout is often linked to something. It used to be that we said it was linked to work. But now with our world of grinding it out the way that it is, it's often burnout can come from more than just work. It might be you're burned out. We've read a lot lately about burned out moms or burned out parents. And especially after the season we've all just been through with holidays and, the ramped up activities for children and the sports seasons coming to an end and everything just gets a little bit more difficult in this time for that. No one's outside enjoying the games in their lawn chairs with their shorts and t-shirts on. It's everybody's bundled up and everybody's, moving through things differently. So that sense of not being motivated to do things, the can be linked to not just work anymore, but all the other sort of grinding parts of being an adult and being a human on this earth. So it's a little more difficult to decide between burnout and depression, which is why oftentimes they're treated similarly. It used to be that we would just say, well, depression is ubiquitous and you feel it all the time, no matter what, whereas burnout is linked to something. That's still true, but it's just harder these days to identify what the burnout is linked to. And so it can get a little sticky in there as well. What I want to talk about, though, is seasonal affective disorder, or really just seasonal changes in the way we feel about things. So all of those same symptoms, the emotional exhaustion, the physical ailments like headaches and fevers and colds and, just feeling nauseous, things like that. Cognitive issues like brain fog and forgetfulness or lack of the ability to focus. Decreased social interactions or decreased desire for social interactions, your own self-doubt, your own hopelessness. Those can also be part of seasonal affective disorder and or just winter blues. The difference is they are tied to the seasons. They are not all year round and they are not all environments and all instances. Those symptoms pretty much line up with the darkening of the days that come in late fall and winter. So we're going to focus on that because that's where we are. We are in the darkening days of winter. We've just come off a really exhausting season that isn't always great and holly and jolly for everyone. It could be triggering because you're with family or friends that you don't normally have to be with, but that can be triggering in some way. It can be exhausting because there's grief tied to the season. Many people experience losses during the season, and yet they're supposed to have this, merriness about them. It can be alienating if you don't celebrate any of the holidays that are sort of in your face at all times. The season itself, December, late November through early January, can just be difficult for a number of reasons. Even if you really love it, it can be a difficult and exhausting season. So we're coming off of that. We're in January where it's new and it's supposed to be as exciting and it's supposed to be this fresh lease on life. And yet we might not feel that way because also gone are the holiday lights. Gone are the festivities. Gone are all of the things that make those November to January periods a little extra exciting, even if it's not really your thing. We're plunged into the darkness of winter, and we're plunged into the cold in a lot of different places in the world. And so it's difficult to be hopeful or light or enthusiastic about going out into the world. And that may be diagnosed as seasonal affective disorder, or it might just be how you're feeling because it's that season of the year. I know for the longest time, I was like a little story. So here we go. For the longest time, I thought I just hated the winter because I hated the cold. My mom was the exact same way. She complained about the ice and snow. She complained about everything. She used to rely heavily on the fact that she was a California girl 3 months out of the year when she had to endure Washington winters. And we didn't, so the energy around my house growing up was just kind of blah all winter long because my mom hated it. I hated it. My sisters hated it. Like we just didn't like cold. We weren't like go out and play in the snow people. We never were. And fast forward to me moving 2 states away to a place that is even colder than where I grew up, like really like legitimately wintry cold. It's officially the Northeast. I grew up in Washington, so, in Maryland. And so that's like, mid-Atlantic kind of, it's cold, but it's not unbearable in the wintertime. I now live in New Jersey, which is like truly the Northeast, and it's cold. And I adjusted in a way that had me rethinking like, oh, maybe it's not so much the cold that makes me sad. And maybe I don't hate going outside as much as I thought. When I got proper coats and boots and things, when we moved here and I bought all sort of this outdoor gear for my kids and I realized like, oh, I don't have to be miserable all winter. I can actually just dress in things that, keep me warm. And that's good. What I noticed though was that the dark is what makes it hard to be motivated to do anything. I go to my office now, and after like my second or third client, it starts to be dark in the office, and it's, you can see behind me if you're watching this, it's a little shaded, and whereas in the summer and spring and fall, this office is bright until like 7:00 at night. The world is just darker. And I recognized that that was what was affecting me. Another thing happened around the same time. I did a book club with a group that during when we were all in lockdown and you had to do book clubs on Zoom. There's a woman who runs another podcast called Cafeteria Christian, and she led a book club. So I went into this book club that was via Zoom. It was the woman who, one of the hosts of the Cafeteria Christian podcast did this book club on the book called Wintering. I'm not going to remember who it's by. I'll look it up and make sure it's in the show notes for you later. But anyway, this book club was me and maybe a couple other people from around the country, but it really felt like me and all these people from Minnesota, because that's where the host was from. And so there was all these people from Minnesota, which is decidedly colder and darker than where I live. Well, maybe not darker, colder than where I live, but maybe not darker, because they were talking about their lives outside and how they adjusted to the winter to still keep themselves in good spirits. And so that was one part of it. One part of the book club that really sort of transformed me was these women and how they were living in a place that was much colder than where I live and still like getting outside and going for walks and doing things that I thought, oh, that feels like it's probably a good idea. And if they can do it, surely I can do it. So that happened. But also the topic of the book is called Wintering, and it was whatever. I'm not going to give a book review, but the thread through the book that I hung on to was our life has seasons. Not just regular like physical seasons, but our life throughout the course of a year has seasons, and we ebb and flow with those seasons. And it's not only okay, but possibly necessary for us to adjust our lives to those seasons. And it was almost like I felt in those moments permission to not just hate winter, but also to not hole up and hide inside all the time. It was like for the longest time, I just thought, oh, well, this is the season where I'm miserable. And this book club opened my eyes to the fact that I didn't need to be. I didn't have to be miserable. It doesn't have to be my favorite, and I don't have to like everything about it. But if I know what's going to get me down and I can plan for that, then I don't have to be as miserable. So I was someone who just accepted that I had seasonal affective disorder, and I was just going to be depressed from, basically late November until April. And this book club helped me turn a little bit of that around. So Not that I could quote unquote cure the seasonal affective disorder, but that I could be aware of it in a way that I could make some changes to alleviate some of it, or just at least make it a little more bearable. So here's what I did. I shifted a couple things, and some of this not everybody can do. And I recognize that. I, have the wonderful privilege of being in business for myself, so I can adjust hours accordingly if I need to, which is what I did. I kind of gave myself the gift of slower mornings. I spent 20 years of my career having to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and be somewhere. But now that I'm in business for myself, I'm able to say, well, hold on. And let me add to that. 20 years of my career doing that for work, and then another 20 years raising children. So I had to be up before them. I have one at home still, but I don't have to be up before him because dad makes his lunch and I can say goodbye from my bedroom as I yell down the hallway. I don't need to be awake before he leaves the house. I mostly am, but I don't have to be. And so I get to get up when I'm ready to get up, which is a huge privilege. I understand, but it is something that I was able to adjust. Now, that said, I kind of expected in the beginning that maybe I'd sleep till like 10 in the morning. That is not the case. I actually now make sure I'm up and out and in working order by 7 a.m. so that I have some time to have these slow mornings. I don't typically exercise first thing in the morning. I don't typically do anything that feels hard first thing in the morning. I always make sure I have light therapy, which is just a little like $25, looks like a picture frame, but it's an LED light that I literally put in my face first thing. You can do it when you're getting ready in the morning. You can do it at makeup. I, again, have the luxury of being able to sit with a cup of coffee and a little space heater that looks like a fireplace and a light right in my face. And it just helps with that, light therapy helps sort of with the circadian rhythm of waking your body up to the natural state of being awake. So I do the light therapy. I, winterize my life, meaning I give myself permission to wear really soft clothes. I try to stay cozy as often as I can. I try not to be cold. Now, I'm at a point in my life, not only seasonally, but also with my age and what's going on with me hormonally, where the line between cold, freezing, and sweating is very thin. So I've had to change my clothes over the last year or so to understand I can be bundled up against the outside elements, but I need to be able to take those layers off so that I'm not sweating on the inside when I get to my office or when I'm in my home or whatever. But that said, I have a larger collection of, sweater pants and cozy slippers and scarves and things that just make me feel cozy and warm in these colder months, so that it's pleasurable to be awake and alive and functioning throughout the day, even when it starts to get dark. I also plan out my days and my weeks and the months of this winter season, understanding what I need to feel okay. So, for instance, I have a winter birthday. I never was big on celebrating my birthday. I just wasn't. I don't know why. Not because I care that I'm getting older or any of those things. We never really celebrated them much when I was a kid. My mom made a cake and that's about it. I think maybe there might be some grief in there, and that it's the reminder every single year that she's not here. She was really the only one that ever did anything special for me for my birthday. And by special, I mean made a cake. So it might be, I've never really thought about it before now, but it might be that grief is what comes in. So I never really was a celebrator of my birthday after she died. And so what I've switched though is that, well, I have friends that take me out to dinner. It's just a thing we do. I have a group of girlfriends and we take each other out for dinner. It's like a mandatory way for us all to make sure we get together, but also we love to celebrate each other. And so it's one thing we do. So I know that I'm going to go to dinner at least one night for my birthday, but also I make sure sometime around my birthday. My husband's birthday is also 5 days after mine, I think. And so we try to make sure then that we do something. As our kids have gotten older, it's very often a night in New York City or a night away somewhere where we just get to go to dinner and, pretend we're, responsibility less and just stay up too late, sleep too late, things like that. So some of my favorite memories of that are walking around the city in the freezing cold and snow, which if you knew me 10 years ago might shock you. But one of the things I was determined to do from this, wintering lesson of mine was don't hibernate fully. Don't hibernate fully and give myself grace when I feel like hibernating. So in addition to making plans for spending a night out or taking the dogs for a walk or ensuring that we go get coffee, if the sun is shining really bright on a specific weekend day, I'll be like, let's get it bundled up and go for a walk.
I've planned to get my body outside as often as I can. I'm still not much of like a hiker or biker, any of those things, but I love a walk. And so we'll go and do that if we can. We'll drive down to the beach in the dead of winter and, watch the sun set or, it's not really great to watch the sunset on the East Coast, but you know what I mean. The beauty of winter is that you can watch the sun rise and it's a little bit later, so you don't have to get up so early in the morning. I just plan things that get me out and that are fun and that remind me that I'm still very much alive and enjoying my life and those kinds of things. Instead of saying, I hate it here and I'm miserable and I just can't wait for spring, which is what I used to do. So knowing that I have a propensity toward seasonal affective disorder, that I have a propensity toward the doldrums of winter, the winter blues, if you will, I try to plan things to pull me out of it. Much like the antidote or the help for burnout is to reach out and ask for support and to, move your body and get rest and reevaluate your priorities. It's similar with seasonal affective disorder. Reaching out for support can mean asking somebody else to go for a walk with you, or like promising each other you're going to wake each other up for a walk or go for a walk. It can also just mean, how do I build support around myself? I use my light therapy. I have slow mornings with really special coffee drinks. That's another thing that shifts. In the summertime, I don't really spend time having coffee in the morning. I have coffee in the morning, but it's usually part of getting ready, or it's in my bathroom as I'm brushing my teeth and getting my hair done and all that stuff. In the winter, it is a purposeful, intentional act. I use creamer. I use sometimes a pump of, peppermint syrup or something. Like I indulge in a warm drink in the morning on winter mornings. Again, it's just a thing that I allow myself in my soft clothes and my soft slippers to slowly wake up and join the day rather than fighting my way into it, which is what I used to do when I was just miserable about the whole thing. So identifying what it is you're feeling when you're feeling it, because it's winter right now, is it seasonal affective? And are there ways you can, add to your life or shift some things in your life, or even just do a couple things here and there during the day to help you support yourself through these times, rather than sort of just admitting defeat and trying to do everything the same no matter what, and just feeling like you're walking through mud or feeling like you're fighting at every turn. Can you shift some things to give yourself that wintering, energy and atmosphere so that things aren't quite as hard and cold and dark? For me, it's light therapy, it's slower mornings, it's cozy clothes, and it's intentional planning of getting out of the house and into the world during the sunlight hours to build up some energy and some reminders that I don't have to totally lay down and sleep for 3 months until it's time to get up. So finding that balance between not fully hibernating, but also allowing myself some space to hibernate and giving myself the grace. If I wake up in the morning and it's dark and gray, I'm not going anywhere. I mean, I don't mean a weekend morning. If I wake up in a weekend morning and normally I would go for a walk or I would get outside or I would do something, but I wake up and it's dark and gray, I will stay in cozy clothes and cozy slippers and read a book or watch TV or, play board games with my kids. Luckily, when I had little kids, they were also indoor people. And instead of feeling guilty about that, or instead of knocking myself for that, I would realize this is what I need to do to support myself today. And that's okay. Again, I recognize that's not everybody's option, but what are your options? If you have little kids and there is no staying home and staying cozy, can you wear, slippers to the basketball game? Can you wear fleece-lined leggings to the basketball game or on the hockey field? Can you, find your nicest, coziest cashmere scarf or soft scarf to the hockey arena? What can you do to keep yourself cozy and warm, or bring yourself as much light as possible in these darker days? How do you manage that? How do you winterize your own life so that you're not just fighting against the season, but instead you're adapting for the season? If only we could just go to sleep for 3 months. I don't think that's an option. So how else can we do it otherwise? All right, that's all I got for today. Until next time, stay curious, stay cozy, and know that you got this.